katoa. Nau mai hoki mai ki tēnei hōtaka nei Rarangatira. Tuatahi māku te honore kia whakapuere tō tātou nei hui ngā no reira kia kara kia tātou. Ko te ara hau tēnei. Kia toka te mano o te rangi e tū nei kia toka. Kia mahaki marire ki tēnei whānau nei hui. Nā pikitia te patu o te rangi e tohu ana koe. Ko te whiwhinga, ko te rauenga, toka anu, toka hea rino hea. Nā tohu iwi maire, tohu e kore tae te titiro. E kōtuku te manu e kore rauia e te ko ira, e kura taka i puni te manu i tūria. Papa te ki apu o ne tango hea, kēnei waiho ana, hei taho aroha nei, e katau. Nā kia ora mai tātou, and welcome back to Rarangatira, one of several live Zooms that are brought to you by the Southern and Western Initiatives and He Waka e Kenoa. TSI and TWI, the social innovation arm of Auckland Council, and we work particularly in the space, or myself and my colleague Anna Jane work particularly in the shared prosperity space. I'm going to pass it over to Anna Jane to talk about tonight's Zoom.
Just want to welcome you, Bernard and Denise, to Rarangatira. The audience for this particular kōrero is our central government colleagues and buyers and clients. And we want to build off the wealth of knowledge that you have built over your careers in supply diversity in the States. So as an introduction to you both, I met Denise and Bernard 2.5 years ago as a part of the Supply Nation delegation to the National Minority Supply Development Council conference, which was held in Detroit. Denise is the founder of Enable Your Vision. Bernard is a principal in that organization, but they have a range of experiences and expertise across both high technology, supply diversity, and I even know that you have a legal background, Bernard. Yes. We are so excited to have you on Rarangatira today. You have been a constant mentor for us as we grow our supply diversity movement in New Zealand. You have played a pivotal role in introducing supply diversity and embedding the supply nation as a council into the Australian economy. And we hope that you'll be able to continue to play a similar role for us in New Zealand. So welcome to this conversation today. We're looking forward to having a chat with you.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for inviting us to speak today. Before we get started, we'd like to do an acknowledgement of the country. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. We'd also like to pay our respects to the elders past and present.
Just to point out that this is a pre-recording, and if you have questions and comments, you can still post them up, and one of our team will endeavour to answer your questions, and we still value your interaction even though this is our pre-recording.
This is a part of the Rarangatira series. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We'll be live again next week from 7 p.m. on Thursday. We'll see you then. So Denise, supply diversity as we know it has its origins in social justice. Are you able to give us a brief history of supply diversity in the USA?
Yes. Supply diversity actually started during the Civil Rights Movement. And the Civil Rights Movement began where Black Americans were looking at racial discrimination and equal rights. At that time in 1955, Rosa Parks was an African-American woman who was sitting on a bus and she was sitting in a seat that a white person asked her to move from. And that really was a kickoff of the movement. And civil rights includes the right to vote, the right to withdrawal, the right to public education, the right to use public facilities. Martin Luther King Jr. was the person who said, let's hit this and do it in a nonviolent way. He did several speeches on I Have a Dream. But he really described a hope for the future for America where Blacks and whites would eat together and join hands together, which is very similar to what you're seeing today. And he did the March on Washington on August 28, 1963, and it was one of the most memorable speeches to me as I was growing up. And to this day, I still look at the quote that he said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." So that is something that has really driven me in the supplier diversity effort. And supplier diversity began in the 60s in conjunction with the civil rights movement. The early stages of the initiative was a government initiative that encouraged federal use of minority business enterprises. And then on March 5th, 1969, President Richard Nixon signed an executive order that established the Office of the Minority Business Development Agency. This was created to enable socially and economically disadvantaged persons to participate in free enterprise and improve the U.S. national economy. This was really a first step that led the U.S. federal government and corporations that are suppliers. So they flowed their requirements to the suppliers, to the government, toward using diverse suppliers and the procurement opportunities in supply chain so that there would be economic wealth. Then in 1972, the National Minority Supplier Development Council, commonly called NMSDC, was formed to advance business opportunities for certified minority organizations, meaning they were owned and operated by someone who was a minority, and to connect those certified suppliers with corporations and public sector member in their supply chains. Some of the things that NMSDC created and are still doing are building MBE, which is Minority Business Enterprise Capabilities through programs and education offerings, facilitating business between MBE to MBE partnerships that meet the needs of the corporations, because sometimes corporations have a big bid and it would be better if there's a joint venture to do that. And they're committed to minorities of all nationalities, Asian, Black, Hispanic, and Native American suppliers in this globalized supply chain. NMSDC is one of the best organizations for looking at the supplier diversity ecosystem. They provide training, matchmaking, obtaining information for small businesses, educating the owners and staff, how to access capital, business development, capacity building, introductions to corporate members, and procurement opportunities. This organization and its affiliates connect the members with certified minority businesses. As we moved along, it was initially a US initiative, but it expanded to be a global initiative, and that's why we're here today. In 2001, NMSDC's Global Link Initiative started going to different countries. I'm going to tell you the names of the countries, and it's not the order that they started the organizations. Australia, Canada, China, South Africa, and the United Kingdom, because they looked at this is a benefit for US businesses to connect with businesses outside of the country. So in 2015, the presidents of the international councils of Australia, Canada, China, South Africa, and the UK formed the Global Supplier Diversity Alliance, commonly called GSDA. And this is where the leaders in supplier diversity come together to create a formal global supplier diversity leadership community and provide networking and education and training and meeting the different councils, different suppliers, the different corporations in those respective countries.
Awesome. Denise, if you can share with us a bit more about how you specifically got involved with supplier diversity.
I got involved in supplier diversity in 2 corporations that I had to work in. The first one was Silicon Graphics, and then with Cisco Systems. I was a supplier diversity program director, and I first started as a US initiative and then went global. But there are some key things that I did to make sure that it's a program that would be sustainable. The first thing is I built a supplier diversity strategic plan. I had an executive sponsor that I met with on a regular basis and shared the plan to make sure it was in alignment with the corporate business goals to drive inclusion of diverse businesses within the supply chain, and it directly impacted the company's growth and bottom line. The second thing I did is I wanted to grow and sustain diverse businesses. I did this through mentorship programs, sponsorships to education programs for entrepreneurs, sharing trends in the direction of the company, and the programming that was necessary for our suppliers to be successful. The mentor program would even do assessments of what the supplier is being seen by the customer and what they needed to do. The next thing that we looked at is developing and facilitating relationships between the diverse businesses, their partners, and customers. This promotes the growth and use of diverse businesses as first suppliers, but also the utilization of diverse partners to sell products and services to our customers. And of course, as the corporation gets bigger and larger, it's multi-tier, not only first-tier suppliers that can be in the supply chain. The next thing that I did was looking at how do you connect the corporation, the diverse businesses, the community, and the customers. When you put them all together, it's a win-win for everybody because you're promoting economic vitality and sustainability on a global basis. And that was the inception of how I got involved, moving from the US to a global supply chain.
Awesome, thank you. And Bernard, what about yourself? How did you get involved with supply diversity?
I had an interesting journey. I was already mentoring emerging business leaders and entrepreneurs. I'm a serial entrepreneur myself. I had a lot of professional training prior to launching my entrepreneurial career. I was a management consultant. I was a big-time system developer. But I got interested in the developing economic wealth within the minority community. My life strategic plan is I realized that U.S. minority communities advancements were not going to come with handouts. You know, that's been tried and it's not working very well. So we needed to work hard so that a significant success could come from within the community. So I wanted to do whatever I could to promote the general welfare of our community through business development, through wealth creation, job creation, political power creation, etc. And I happened to accompany my wife to a number of supplier diversity conferences, and I found like-minded people. So I have all this experience in training and advancing organizations, developing organizations. And so this was perfect. I thought, well, here I can leverage the skills I have in a meaningful way to help uplift our community. Then probably the best thing of all was as I networked, talked to people there, I found out that there were just a lot of like-minded people who also thought that our way out of our difficult situation in the United States, our lack of social justice, would be through business development, would be through advancing our businesses and creating sustainable processes within our own community. And so the annual conference provided me with a venue to talk to these people and keep moving forward. And as I mentioned, I'm also a serial entrepreneur, patent holder, and a volunteer community leader, which translated into, well, what do you do with all this stuff? I mean, how do you make it better? And rather than, I mean, I enjoy a lot of youth programs, things like that, but it was even more rewarding to help start businesses in our community and help entrepreneurs to be successful and watch what they did with their new economic wealth and gain to help their friends in the community.
I think that leads really nicely on to our next question. The Black Lives Matter movement is growing across the world and is prominent in America right now. What role, and I think you've answered some of it, what role do you think supply diversity plays in improving equity?
Well, let me first put a context around this question because I love this question. It is very appropriate. Black Lives Matter is not just about keeping Black people from having a knee on their neck and getting shot by policemen. At the core, it's about dealing with our economic inequities, dealing with the systematic racism that holds us down. At the same time, we're trying to move forward. So first off, comparing now to back in the 60s, there's a couple of important distinctions. Thanks to supplier diversity and programs like that, more people know or are familiar with Black lives and the challenges that we face. Hence, as you see the protests, you see there are people from all walks of life, all races out there together. I think that comes from the familiarity that they have. And much of it comes from things like supplier diversity, where many corporate and small businesses now have Black businesses that are in their supply chain. So they know somebody. They know somebody who is suffering from the economic disparities and challenges. They know about our banking problem because we're trying to support them and having trouble getting finance. And then just on a person-to-person level, many more people have meaningful relationships with Blacks, Native Americans, and Hispanics because of supplier diversity programs. So you're not just watching something in a tube that's a distant set of people. These are people that you know and work with every day, and that makes a huge difference. The third thing I'll say about the context, though, is that supplier diversity calls a whole nation's attention to systematic inequity. We wouldn't need supplier diversity if it was a level playing field, if things were fair. So the supplier diversity programs have, if you will, woke up the nation. And then say two more things about supplier diversity. These initiatives improve the participation rates of minorities themselves and the benefit of the nation's economy. Essentially, you know, the government is about furthering the economics of the country. And if we're not involved, we're missing out and only seen in a lot of ways. So most of our people, unfortunately, participate as laborers or consumers, and that's it. Well, supplier diversity opens up the door for us to contribute as producers, as manufacturers, as suppliers, feeding the system as opposed to simply consuming from the system. And then an important one for me is supplier diversity has another subtle message that's there. It helps us shatter unfounded myths about minorities. Oh, minorities are lazy. Minorities don't want to work. Minorities, you know, just all these things that we have to deal with, unfortunately, on a day-to-day level. Well, supplier diversity has changed a lot of that for those who are open to it, because suddenly they find hardworking business leaders, hardworking entrepreneurs, and the people that work for them. So the company is coming in, and these people are working hard, and that just flies in the face of the myths. And then a concrete thing that supplier diversity does, it enables diverse suppliers through employment and fair wages, which they provide to their families and their communities, to suddenly have better access to things like healthcare, healthy food choices, insurance, housing, banking, quality of life luxuries that heretofore we were simply restricted from, and it was out of our reach. So I think supplier diversity has a major role in improving Black Lives Matters and helping to obtain the goals.
Thank you. Thanks, Bernard. It's really, really powerful. I love the way you summed that up. Denise, most of your career has been dedicated to growing the practice of supplier diversity in the States. What have been some of the material differences that you've been able to see for Black and minority families and communities as a result of your work?
So I'm going to speak about this from the corporate standpoint and how we impacted Black families and the end result for the suppliers. The most important thing to think about is it created a positive community of role models with the Black and minority suppliers within the US. It gave hope to the youth and the peers that they could have big business ownership and successes. And by participating in programs in the supply chain, participating in mentorships, that gives people an opportunity to grow their businesses. They might start off as small and become billion-dollar businesses, or they might go from small to medium. But this is what the youth will see and their peers will see, and they know that there is opportunity. Minority business owners also were able to give back to the communities. There have been several of the CEOs of the businesses that have worked with us and other companies where they will take time after they've worked on the weekends and during the evenings, talking to other groups, volunteering their time, leading some of the leading nonprofit organizations. And that is really a great opportunity for role modeling and giving back to the communities. The important part that is really probably number one, but I have it listed as number two, is driving revenue generation and economic vitality. People go into business to make money, but how do they make money? They create a business that can help the community, the corporation, and the supplier. They can hire family and the community, and they can benefit from the economic growth and sustainability. Minority employers help them get better job opportunities. Students can go and internship at some of the minority businesses, and some are able to take the money that they earn and purchase homes, which would never have been an opportunity until they got to that minority business. So to me, that is a driving reason why we should be having minority businesses throughout the world, because it impacts the community, the family, and the business. The other thing is mentor small business leaders and provide access to high-level US corporations and global corporations. I made sure that I had networking where I branched out and I took my minority suppliers with me to the global events and to the US events. There were networking opportunities where they could talk to people who were technically executives into some of the corporations, or to other large businesses who were a minority in other countries. And this helps inspire family members who see this and employees to become entrepreneurs, because they may not have known it was possible. And when they went outside the US, they found out that there were other people they could network with in very different diverse business sectors and branching out, and they can grow. There have been examples where some of the minority small businesses would actually have joint ventures with other businesses in other countries. And that's a way to have 24/7 network and really branch out and look at how you can grow your business. It also created a new group of minority mentors. It enabled the families, the relatives, and the friends to learn from someone they trust, because in our culture, trust is a big part. So if you see someone who has really done well, has a large business, is hiring members of the community, is reaching back and volunteering and helping others grow, this is really a great thing for those families and peers to see, and to continue that pipeline within the community and putting money toward the community. And when you think about minority businesses, and if they're having their business in the community will say, I will support that business because they're one of us. And that one day I might be able to be that part. So that is very important. And I like to end by saying it provides community jobs and training. Minority business owners hire family members as interns, and it helps spread the wealth, because everyone who participates is a winner in that particular part. And then the minority business owners hire more minorities and are more dedicated to their success. They watch and help them grow. There were some instances where someone came in at a certain level, and when a job opportunity came up, they had that opportunity to take that other job and grow and develop with the business. And the businesses that started as small have sustained from medium to business to large business. And that is inspiration to everyone involved, and watching how that helps the wealth of the community and the wealth of the employees and the company as well. So those are a few factors for growing diversity on Black families.
I'd like to dovetail on that last comment, because I don't think this can be said enough to our government executives. No offense, they design programs that have good intentions, but it's the execution of those programs where there's generally failure. So you can put up Job Corps, you can put up job training, you can try to recruit people off the corner, but it's not quite the same, because the incentive or the motivation is not necessarily there on the people on the street who are doing the work as a job, of training. So I'll go train those guys. That's it. Versus a minority business owner who wants to see his community succeed, who wants to get young boys off the street, who wants to give young ladies a future, who wants to hear what they have to say because they have skills and values. And they'll take the extra minute. They'll take the extra time. They'll give them a shot at a job that's a stretch job, a stretch opportunity, versus well-intended but often failing programs where we'll throw up a training and then they you hear it, well, people don't come. Well, they don't come because they don't feel welcome. They don't come for a lot of reasons. Versus when these same programs are done by minority businesses themselves. So if the indigenous business is there, people know who that person. They're in the community. They know, they may have seen them at church. They may see them in various places. So there's a trust level there. And we have a concept we talked about called the trusted partner. You will pay more attention to a trusted partner than you will to any program coming from any government agency. So the key is, if the government program is through things like supplier diversity, where they're driving benefits through supporting indigenous businesses, there's a lot higher success rate and data to prove it. And so even though the definition of minority in our countries are a little different, the issues are the same. They're so parallel that it's not even funny. And it's that way around the world, which has enabled Denise and I to go from country to country and work with organizations emerging like HEWIN, help them out, because the success is the same, the formula is relatively the same, and the issues, unfortunately, are the same. So it makes more sense for agencies to use their money wisely and efficiently by pushing them through programs like supplier diversity, as opposed to a number of the other programs that classically come out of those agencies.
And one of the things that we didn't touch on is consultants. Consultants are really important, minority consultants. Let's say you have a minority consultant who knows you're going to do some marketing campaigns. Who better knows the community that you're going to reach out to than those minority consultants? They can tell you exactly what is needed and what should be done. So that is a service opportunity business that returns in many ways. And with the business training, I talked about interns. Some of the companies bring in interns one summer and might do manufacturing. The next summer, they might do marketing. Next summer, they might do operations. But they're getting all those opportunities at that minority business so they can see what is possible. I remember when I went to school, they talked about being teachers, firemen, policemen, right? But there's so many aspects when you look at all the minority businesses and what people do. And so it's a great training ground to make sure that everyone is on an equal playing field and has hope and inspiration. And maybe some of those young kids might start businesses of their own before they get out of high school or college.
And I'll add one more point before we move on. The minority communities often bring a lot of value that was heretofore unrecognized. So example, I've talked to a number of indigenous businesses in New Zealand. And indigenous business owners in New Zealand have always respected certain core values, one of which is making sure that their practices are sustainable, that they're protecting the resources of the environment. Well, we've got all these corporations around the world trying to figure this out. And we have people, mostly indigenous in these countries, who figured it out a long time ago and already understand, already make it part of their practice. And so as I talk to those business leaders, I say, wait, you're not going in empty-handed looking for a tender offer. You're bringing in skill sets. You're bringing in knowledge. You're bringing in understanding. You're bringing in best practices that these other organizations need, whether it's the government or major corporations. And so we have a lot to offer. And this is an opportunity when supplier diversity programs are supported to bring that to the fore, to expose that, and to expose more people to an understanding that that's available right there under their nose through bringing in diverse suppliers who can contribute.
One of the things that I was, that I really loved about the trip to Detroit and going to the National Minority Supply Diversity Conference, Council Conference, was the trade show, and just seeing thousands of different organizations, household brands, all looking for minority businesses to import into their supply chains. This is an additional question, but how important is it to start with opportunity? Knowing, Denise, that your role in Cisco was to create a path for minority businesses to be included in the Cisco supply chain.
So I think that the Minority Business Opportunity Fair is exactly the place to go to learn what opportunities are out there, because people are looking to see what is innovative and what will make a change. By saying that, you go to the Business Opportunity Fair, prepare ahead of time of what you're going to do, what you want to get out, knowing that you will get offered typically that day, but you can build that relationship, tell what you have to offer, and what will make a difference to that business moving forward. And also making sure that there are introductions. If you go to Supply Nation, if you go to NMSCC, you always look to see what you want to do, who do you know who's going to be there, who can introduce you and say that you're in the supply chain. The one wonderful thing about supplier diversity is that all the supplier diversity managers, directors, VPs, we all want to use diverse suppliers. So we don't mind sharing, because the bottom line is you don't want all of the business with one company. So your peers know, here is a candidate I have who has XYZ, which your supply chain know what's going on. So it helps if the supplier has those meetings with PUN and with Supply Nation and with different corporations in NMSCC, so that they can help through the waters, introduce the ability to network, and really have an opportunity to talk about yourself there, but also to do it before and also to do it after, because that really helped a lot. Because sometimes we would have, in our Cisco booth, we would have people from procurement and from sales, when we were looking at channel partners, in the booth talking to people to find out who was there, who are they working with, what would they do for Cisco. And sometimes they were walked over to that booth they wanted to get in, and that made all the difference in the world. So use the time wisely, because it's a huge venue. It can be overwhelming. The first time going, seeing that many booths, that many people, but if you have a plan and you have a connection that can get you, it's the best opportunity in the world.
I'd like to hold up a prism to this question and take a slightly different angle on it. And that is, to strengthen our communities, we need diversity in our business sectors that we're developing. Good entrepreneurs are problem solvers. And if you only know a few industries, everybody's trying to solve the same problem. Well, it turns out there are plenty of problems to solve. And these opportunity fairs are showing our entrepreneurs, some of our best and brightest minds, what else is out there? What other arenas are out there that they can begin to explore? And it's all good for our communities to bring in that diversity of business base. I mean, it's well known that if the majority of your businesses, for example, are in the construction business, and we have the normal ups and downs of the construction cycle, when it's down, then it takes the whole community down. So we need diversity. And diversity they'll find when they see that there are thousands of different brands out there doing thousands of different things, all of which you can say, we can do that. My company could do that. So you need not fall because you're all crowded into one sector. You can't all be mom and pop businesses and raise the entire community. Somebody has got to do other things. And these trade fairs offer an opportunity for you to find out, well, there's a business in delivery of the booths of the trade show. There's a business in putting the carpet down. There is a business in packaging. There is, so you go to the grocery store, you see all these different packages, but most of the time you don't pay any attention or understand how we got there. Well, it turns out those are all businesses. And it's the thing I like seeing is when entrepreneurs go there and their eyes get big and they go, wow, look at all the things we can do. And then they run back home and say, you have no idea the things I saw. And there's a lot of creativity in our community. And this is wonderful. It's wonderful. So everybody doesn't have to train to be, and I'm not knocking, a laborer in the construction business. There's a lot of things we can do. What I really like with Supply Nation is that Supply Nation opened the door in nearly every aspect of their operation. So they have videographers, they have the catering, they have the setup, the trade stuff. They had applications development. They brought in media developers. They had a minority design their logo. So what it showed, though, was it showed the greater majority community, whoa, there's a lot of talent out there that we didn't know existed. The typical comment was, well, I didn't know we had that many businesses. I didn't know we had that range of services. Well, and so part of the job of Supply Nation and the future HEWIN is to get that information out, to get that exposure out, and for them to learn. Again, destroying another myth. There's great diversity out there. There's great opportunity, and there are people who are looking for it.
And the workshops, along with the business opportunity, are an excellent source of information, because when you go to Supply Nation, they'll be talking about what is innovative, what has changed, what is the trend coming up. And that's one of the things that people should look at when they go on the floors. They can see what the trends are that are coming. People are discussing it so that you can prepare. If you find a part that fits in with your business, that's something you might want to get more information about. And this is a great opportunity by looking in your target area to see if it's the same thing that you're doing, or if there are opportunities you haven't thought about that you might want to do, or whether or not you want to do a venture and pair up. So it's easier to learn along the way.
And before we head on to your last question, let me say one more thing. COVID-19 is actually a silver lining. It takes disruptions a lot of time for people to rethink what they do. So businesses were doing the same thing, the same old way with the same old people all the time. Well, thanks to COVID-19, they've had to pause for a second, look around. And this is a wonderful opportunity for our indigenous businesses to stand up, raise their hand and say, by the way, we could do that a little differently, or we could do that. And we have some examples. For example, a group in Australia was sourcing masks for pharmacies. Well, guess what? One of the PPEs were a big deal all over the world. So suddenly this indigenous business has a huge opportunity, which they were well positioned for, partly because their entire supply wasn't already taken up by one corporation. They were already having to learn skills of getting it out. So they were well positioned for the COVID-19 opportunity. And that's happening all over the place for entrepreneurs who want to open up and take a look. There are wonderful opportunities out there. And it's it started with supplier diversity. It absolutely started. If vendors weren't open to look for new suppliers, we wouldn't have that. Because those businesses would not have been ready. They would not have been looking at it. They would have just felt shut out. So I'll let that be my last comment in this area. So being mindful of the time.
I have an additional question. Just going back to something that you said earlier, Denise, around your work in the two companies are in supply diversity. How important is it for buyers and clients to shepherd and support minority businesses into their supply chain in the first instance and then grow them? When I was in the States, I saw lots around protege programs that different large companies were delivering. Lots of things that looked at how you support businesses into the supply chain and grow businesses to meet some of the challenges that your company might be facing. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yes, so there are three aspects. The government has their mentor protege program for their corporations, suppliers. There are companies that create their own mentor programs So we had our own mentor program where we brought our suppliers in, and we brought small groups in at a time, and they were in the program for a year. They would do an assessment of their skills, and they would be assigned executive or someone within the supply chain of the business area that they were in. And they would be able to look at what are the opportunities at the company and how they could grow. So I'll give you an example what happened with one in particular. This one particular company was a transportation company, and they had a conversation with the person who was their mentor. And over time, they realized that they needed to look at being a global business, not a local business only. So they would discuss what countries Cisco was going to go into, and then whether or not that was something of interest, allowing them to do the research and giving them the opportunity. And the short and long of it is that they became global. The same thing happened to a very small business where they went global and they got a partner in another part of the world to do business with, and they did 2 countries, and it was very successful. So being in the mentor protege program or a mentor program is extremely important. We also had an alumni group. After they went out of the mentor program, they were brought back on a quarterly basis to find out what was new and upcoming at the company so they could prepare. So looking at trends and forecasts. So that's really important. The last area to speak to, there are several organizations, universities in the US that have entrepreneur academies or programs. And we sponsored suppliers to go through that. And so they have the opportunity to work with the university business schools typically. And they would look at their company, pitch ideas that they have, and they worked through it and wrote a paper. And then the end result of that was people made decisions, stay with what they were doing, expand what they were doing, or coming out saying it was a family-owned business, and the owner will say, I now know the family will be able to take the business forward. So I can't say enough about the value of being in a mentor protege university program, because you never stop growing as an entrepreneur. You're always looking at how do I do my business, and especially in this time of COVID, as Bernard said, some businesses are changing or updating to meet the times and the need. And this is a great time to assess that and also talk with the businesses where you're doing your business. Maybe they have come up with some new ideas that they want to do that impacts what you would like to do with the company and help you grow and sustain. Because the whole thing is once you're there, you want to sustain, maintain, and grow. And through those kind of programs, you can do that.
That's awesome. Last question. Bernard, you and Denise have acted as mentors to Supply Nation to grow them to be the powerhouse they are today. What are 3 key pieces of advice you would give to a fledgling intermediary like He Waka e Whenua?
Well, actually, I have 4 pieces of advice. The first and probably most important one is to around the area of setting targets. What drives the supplier diversity success in the early days? We know economically in the long run it makes sense, and businesses will discover that this is not just a social equity issue, that this is good for business and they will benefit. But they don't necessarily know that out of the box. So it's important that you have the federal government, your Opulent Council, and participating corporations set targets for indigenous business spend. It's very basically seeded. It's not a chicken and egg problem. You tell them, okay, lay the egg, we'll get there. Okay, get started. So setting targets is the first key piece of advice I'll get you. Insist on targets being set so that they can be measured, so that it's just not talk. We won't have this conversation 10 years from now. 10 years from now, we want to be like we are at Supply Nation, where we're saying, we're talking now about $4.7 billion in spend, way more than the little over $1 million in year 1. I mean, it's a huge difference. Set the target to follow up. The second thing we'll tell your organization is that you need in every one of your relationships with the government, the corporations, you need to find a champion, someone who can work from the inside. The reason for that is just human dynamics. You have a job to do, you can't be everywhere. Also, it takes a while to understand the corporate culture. So you need someone inside who has a handle on the corporate culture and who also has a handle on what it is you're trying to accomplish, who can help, who can be the champion. And once again, if it's a person inside the agency and a person inside the corporation, telling people inside the corporation, they're viewed differently from you on the outside banging on the door. So second most important thing is champions who can help carry the torch. The third thing is, and I can't underscore this enough, I've studied over 3,500 different trade associations and professional associations. And I can tell you that one of the great dividers between the very successful ones and the others are the provision of training. Education is so important. This is new to a lot of people in your environment. So you need to explain to them why they should do protege programs. You need to explain to them why that's important and what the benefits are. So it's important that they learn to invest in supplier development. And you invest in supplier development. You have to train. One of the challenges that I talk about all the time when I talk to entrepreneurs is, you know what, you win the contract, you'll be dead next week because you're not ready. They don't understand what it means to be ready. So an organization like HeWin can provide that information, and we can cut down the failure rate, the unnecessary failure rate. Hey, and the same with corporate developments. They can have all of the social justice, social equity, heart in the right place they have, but it's just still an execution of a program. And so it's important that you help them learn best practices, that you tell them what works, and not rely on each one of them to figure it out themselves, because that's a recipe for a long, long, long curve before you get where you'd like to be. Supply Nation had the benefit of the fact that they were looking at over 50 years at NMSCC and its affiliates doing their job. And so it could be compressed down into key points and they could get off and running and get on with the business that we needed to, which is advancing supplier diversity. And then the last point, and again, this is critical, and that is recognition of accomplishments. I mean, nothing excites people more than being recognized for putting the effort in. This is a hard road. We're talking about changing people's minds, changing people's mindsets, working at things differently than the way you're used to. So it's important for your organization to recognize the accomplishments from the corporate side, from the supplier side, and all of the advocates who do their job. It does two things. It also makes the individual feel good, but it also actually helps raise their stature within the organizations where they work, because their executives didn't necessarily know and don't know whether their program is successful until they see the recognition, until they attend the event and see others who have succeeded in what they did. And it's, in fact, raising the bar for everybody. So the four things: set targets, find a champion, provide training, provide recognition of accomplishments. One will be able to be in a better place than Waka to tell the success of supplier diversity in New Zealand. You're at the center of the information, the center of the activity, and so it's critical that you publicize the success.
Awesome. That brings us to the end of our kōrero with you two. I just really want to acknowledge and send a huge mihi to you guys for all the support, for the kōrero today, but for your support and all the mahi that we've done. You've been both a great set of ears to talk to, but also I always find every time we have a kōrero with you, I feel more motivated to keep going and doing what we're doing, and keep pursuing this track that we're on. So just thank you, and thank you.
Yeah, just to add, you know,
We're all together.
it's also the incredible networks that you connect us with. You're so well connected across the global supply diversity landscape, and we are lucky enough to be able to learn from you and all of the people that are a part of your community as well.
Cool. Kia ora.